Welcome to DC Local Leaders, the podcast where we talk to C-suite leaders within the DC area. Our guests share their pathways to success and the important moments that impacted their careers. Lean in as we get the inside scoop on how they are shaping their industries, how they lead, manage, and connect with others. From the sectors of aerospace, defense, tech, IT, and more, this is Local Leaders. Your host has been making meaningful connections with industry leaders for over 15 years. Here's Philip Nathram.
All right. Thank you so much, Kate Martin, for everything that you've been doing to make this podcast a success. And welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the DC Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Nathram, and today is episode number 1. We're so excited that we're here with our very first episode, and today we've got an incredible conversation that we'd like to share with you that we had with Sonia Mundra. Sonia is the president of Chenega Analytic. It's a part of Chenega Corporation, and she just shares an outstanding journey of how she went from being an accountant to president. One of the things that she shared with us was be a risk seeker. Be a risk seeker, and that resonated so much that we titled the episode Be a Risk Seeker, and just really appreciate her taking the time out to speak with us and just give us all of her experience. We know that it's a long episode. We will have clips coming out soon on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. Remember to follow us on all of our social media so that you don't miss the message. If you hear something today that resonates with you in this episode, please don't keep it to yourself. Make sure to share it with someone, a coworker, an employee, a family member, someone you care about. If you're on Apple Podcasts, subscribe and rate. If you're on Spotify, remember to follow. We don't want you to miss the message, and we don't want to take up too much more time. We want to get right into it. Just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and we're just so excited to continue to do this, and we hope that you find something that resonates with you the way that it resonated with us. Yeah, well, welcome. Thank you for doing this. We're here today with Sonia Mundra. She is the president of Chenega Analytic Business Solutions. We're here in their office, and today is the very first episode of DC Local Leaders Podcast. It's a podcast where we're just going around to the leaders of our local community. That's government contractors, tech firms, nonprofits, and speaking with the leaders of those companies and getting them to open up to us about their story, their successes, and how they lead, manage, and connect with other people. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm super honored that I get to be guest number 1.
Yeah. I called you cold. But I called you cold, and then I think I sent an email, and then I called you back, and you picked up, and I really appreciate you doing that. We chatted for a little bit, and it's just something I'm passionate about, and I'm really happy to be here. Your career stuck out to me in a huge way, just from where you started to where you are now, and it's still not over. But that story is exactly why we're doing this, and what I want to talk about today. So I really appreciate you being here.
It's my absolute pleasure. I hope that everybody listening, if they can even get one nugget of good information, then I'll know that we've accomplished our goal today.
Yeah, for sure. Chenega. Am I saying that right, or is it Chenega?
Chenega.
Chenega. The Chenega Business Analytic Solutions is the name of your company.
Yes.
But it's a division of Chenega MIOS.
Correct.
And what's MIOS stand for?
So MIOS used to stand for Military Intelligence and Operations Support.
Okay.
That's a holdover name from when the unit started in 1998. And, they shortened it up to MIOS because a lot of the folks heard military and they were like, oh, you guys just service DOD. So to show that we service all federal government customers, now we're calling it MIOS. Okay.
So I looked at your website, and we got a lot of information from that. The Chenega people look like they're pretty resilient people. There was, an earthquake in the 60s, which caused a tsunami, which wiped out 26 people, which was a third of their population. I think I got that math right. I hope I did. Then in not even 25 years later, there was an oil tanker spill, right, which also devastated them. And then in the 90s, the mid 90s, I think, when they were recovering from that, they sold a large portion of their property to the United States government and formed a government contracting agency.
Yep, that's correct. So the Chenega people are extremely resilient. They have gone through a lot of hardship and they've overcome it. So natural disasters, like you mentioned, like the tsunami, the earthquake. It's funny because our CEO actually, he was there as a young boy through that incident.
Wow.
And he remembers it. I mean, he was probably only 4 years old and he survived, right? That earthquake and subsequent tsunami. And he told us about it. And it really, frankly, sounds terrifying. I mean, it was a huge tsunami. It was one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded in the history of the United States. And over again, you see that these people are overcoming tragedy after tragedy and so resilient that they're able to build back up again. And then the other incident that you mentioned was a tanker oil spill, polluting all of their water that they fish in. I mean, it was absolutely devastating. It was an Exxon Valdez spill. And they say that to this day in the Chenega Bay, you can still see a little bit of the oil, even though it happened so many decades ago. That just shows you how crazy it was.
And I think fishing was the main, that's
Correct.
how they fed themselves and supported themselves. So that was
Absolutely.
devastating to their economy and how they even did anything.
It was almost probably the worst thing that could have happened. So, but as you can see, they're able to, rebuild their communities. And, with the money that they took, they were very smart. They started a going concern. And unlike some of the other Alaska Native tribes, Chenega is not a regional corporation. It's a village-owned corporation, so we have very few shareholders. We have less than 150 shareholders. And the other thing that's unique about Chenega is that the profits from the company are the only ones. It's the only form of income that the Chenega people have. So unlike some of the other Alaska Natives that have oil holdings and other types of holdings, this corporation is the primary and in many cases only form of subsistence that the Chenega people have. So it's definitely I keep that in mind as I'm no pressure, right?
Yeah.
So as I'm going through my day-to-day job, that these Chenega folks are dependent upon our corporation. But I also find that it's a really positive thing because our board is very focused, unlike maybe some of the other tribes. They're very focused on, the dealings and the holdings and the business that we do in the corporation. So we get a lot of support from them, right? They're not distracted by other business ventures and other types of holdings where, the board is turning over all the time. And that's another thing that's also unique about Chenega is that our board has remained relatively constant over the last 30 years. So that's really contributed to the stability overall of Chenega Corporation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell just from the way that you describe it, you're passionate about what you do. And it shows their resilience and what they've been doing. I guess that obviously affects the culture of this business, right? I mean,
it does. I mean, they very much are like, you know what, you have to, if there are hardships, you have to pick on and, you have to get on with it. You have to pick up and get on with it. So, definitely a great attitude, a great backbone, right? And we want to look at new ventures. We want to make sure we're keeping up with the market, but we also understand that what their goals are, right? Which is to preserve their language, heritage, culture. So, we want to get involved in things, but we don't want to do anything that's necessarily crazily risky and things like that. The Chenega Corporation is almost like a holding portfolio. So in the sense that they're very diversified in a lot of different businesses. So MIOS does government contracting and some commercial work, but we also have basically a fast food holding company. Yeah.
What kind of fast food?
It's so we actually, I think, bought some like Popeyes and some
Really? So
other,
like franchises. You
yeah,
got into...
like yeah. And they have one called Slapfish, I think that's in Colombia. But Chenega Foods is an actual company. So, some people have told me, hey, we've seen when we go on our credit card, like I bought something from somewhere and it said Chenega Foods on it. So, which I think is good because, you can't just rely on one type of industry for your livelihood. You should diversify your portfolio.
Yeah, they took the private equity sort of, capital venture approach. But you are the president of CABS.
That's right.
So specifically CABS, what is it that line of business does?
Yeah. So Chenega Analytic Business Solutions, or CABS, is small disadvantaged business. We are wholly owned by our parent company, Chenega Corporation. We have been in business for almost 3 years. We are 8A certified by the SBA, the Small Business Administration. We just entered year 2 of the program. We are primarily focused on government contracting, so serving the needs and the mission of our government customers. And our core competencies are in, IT, cyber, training, some administrative support, and we have some logistical capabilities as well.
Okay. So you said you've been in business for 3 years?
Yes, CABS has been. And I've been with Chenega it'll actually be 7 years in March.
Right. So you're the president of CABS, but you joined Chenega as something different. What was that?
Yes. So I started out on the line as a staff member, as a company program controller for a subsidiary company, or what we call a sister company, that has now graduated from the 8A program. Okay. When I first started there, we had 2 contracts and the company over so many years has been very successful, and so successful that it's now graduated from the 8A program and is viable in the the full and open and large business environment. So I am a CPA, so I came on managing that subsidiary's financials, and I had an opportunity to grow as that company grew. Chenega sponsored me to get my PMP, and then I started working about 7 months later as the operations manager. So kind of leveraging my financial expertise, not just to manage financials, but also manage the other aspects, the people management, HR, recruiting, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, yeah, and that's really the meat of what I was hoping to get from you today in our conversation. It's just looking at your career path and wanting to get that story of your career path and talk about those impactful moments that have shaped how you lead, manage, and connect with other people, and other people including yourself, right? Or just people in general, including yourself. Because you started off as an accountant at a consulting firm. Mm-hmm. And was that right out of college?
Yeah, so I started out as a financial analyst with Accenture, the consulting firm. Yep, right out of college. And then I worked as a research analyst at PricewaterhouseCoopers prior to coming to Chenega.
So at that time, though, when you were in college, did you think, what I want to do is be an accountant? And was that at that moment, that was what you wanted to do when you were focused on that?
I always assumed that I would be managing something in financial, some financial manager or some sort of accounting manager managing financials.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but now you're managing a company, which obviously there's financials there, but there's a lot of technical requirements to manage this company because you guys do a lot of IT solutions and program management. And you mentioned that you're a PMP. How did you make that transition from going to, so first you're an accountant, which typically accountants really aren't seen as being out of the box thinkers too much, because they can't be and they shouldn't be, right? Because they're supposed to do a certain function. Mm-hmm. What did you do? Were you taking classes? Did you go to grad school? Did you start reading? Did you have a mentor? Like, talk to us about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I did a lot of reading up on different types of technology to understand our business lines better. I asked a lot of questions when we were managing projects, even reading the contracts and things like that. I had a little bit of business law and contracts law experience from taking my CPA, so it wasn't too hard to understand the contractual and requiramental part of that. But yeah, I did a lot of reading. I listened to a lot of podcasts. And
what were you listening to?
So I like to listen to How I Built This.
Yeah.
And the Harvard Business Review.
So, and do you follow anyone? Like, who are some of the people that you use either as a mentor that you actually know, that you get to meet with and have coffee and ask for advice? And then what about speakers like Brene Brown or Mel Robbins? There's a number of them, like Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, anything like that. Is that part of what you follow, what you read, or, anything? Share with us an author, a book that you read recently that you can recommend for us.
Yeah. So I would say those podcasts that I recommended are really good. How I Built This is a great one. It's by NPR, and he interviews people. The gentleman interviews people that say it's exactly what it sounds like. How I built my business, and you hear about. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of risk. And I think we don't think about that. Like, we just assume when we see successful people that they've always been successful. Right. They always will be successful. And then you hear about, like, for example, I love to travel, right? Or I used to love to travel prior to COVID. Yeah. They did one on Lonely Planet, the one that makes the guidebooks and things like that. And they just got into it, the owners just got into it for, the love of the game. It wasn't something that they did to make money. They encountered a lot of difficulties, obstacles throughout the way. I mean, when we look at Lonely Planet now, I mean, they are the guidebook, right? But back in the day when they were going to, back in the 70s, they were traveling through Asia, traveling through South America. There really wasn't any information for, the European or the American reader on these planets. There was no good guidebook at all because nobody really, nobody went there, right? Yeah. And was willing to share their knowledge. So being able to, and they really transformed the industry, because you'll notice, like, you might remember back in the day, I remember back in the day when I was a little girl, if we wanted to go on a trip, my mom would go and meet with our travel agent, Debbie.
There was a person that would schedule this. You would have to do this with someone. It's not like you just go on the internet. We're about the same age, I think. And we didn't have internet. I was probably in high school.
Right.
When we got internet. Yep. And then it was dial-up.
Juno.
With a compact computer. And then inevitably, like, I'd be on the internet and someone would call. And then, or they'd pick up the phone. It's like,
and you would get cut off from the internet. Yeah. Or you'd be told by your parents to get off the internet because they needed to use the phone.
Right. They needed to, right. Exactly. So especially like going on a vacation, you had to go to a person who had all of the booking information. They knew where the hotel, you only got hotel information because they gave it to you.
Right.
And then you just assumed that was right and correct, and then you signed up with them, and that's how you went on a vacation.
Right. And then you also, like, if you wanted to go to some place that was a little bit out of the box or even in the box, you'd need a tour guide, and you'd have to go with a guide. There was no concept of, I'm just going to take this book and I'm just going to do it myself, right?
Right. And so do you see leadership of a company being somewhat like that, where you don't really know what to expect, but you do, at least you have some guides here, right? Because you have people in some of the other business lines that Chenega has. But talk to me about, so we were talking about the PMP initially, and I guess my question there was, how do you find it? Is it difficult for you at all to manage technical people not coming directly from a technical background, or how have you worked around that, or does that even come up?
Yeah. So a lot of people will say, well, I mean, it's funny because I don't consider myself to necessarily be technical. I'm just technical in my field, right? So I think the folks, they know, and I don't think they necessarily expect someone who's in senior level management to know every single thing about their particular niche of technology, because even people that are really technologically savvy, like, either they know cybersecurity test and evaluation. They may not know a different part of technology, right? Or because it's so specific and you have to be so deep. So you may be a cyber expert. You may or may not know enterprise architecture, right? Or you may know, enterprise architecture and not know some other type of technology. You may not know AI, right? Or emerging technology, right?
So they're open-minded about.
I think so. I think as what garners credibility is that people as long as you have the ability to basically understand what they're doing. So you need to know enough just to understand, okay, well, this is just to make sure that they know you understand.
Right.
And I think people understand that I'm technical. I'm not an expert, and I don't need to be, because I'm not necessarily the PM anymore, managing the project. Yeah. So.
How did you make the jump from being a project manager to getting into leadership, and what was that like? Just your job seems like there's got to be a lot of vulnerability and fear wrapped around that. Just in making decisions, knowing if it's the right one or not. It's based on experience, and I'm sure that you have people to lean on and talk to. But when you're in a project, because I've done project management before. Before I was a commercial real estate broker, I did real estate development. It's a different type of project management because that's construction based. Mm-hmm. But in every project, we generally knew that there was going to be certain highlights and certain milestones that we needed to reach. There was generally a timeline that was expected to reach them. There was a schedule. It was dialed in. It was more. I kind of knew it would be difficult to get there because you never knew what would happen in between that one point to the next, but we knew where to go. When you're trying to grow a company, it seems like you put together a budget, you put together a business plan for the next following year, but you don't always know if that's the right move. How do you navigate all of that? And then how did you make the jump from going from being a PMP to that leadership position?
Mm-hmm. You're right. There is a ton of risk involved in being in a leadership role. So one thing that I've had to really learn how to do is make sure that we're concentrating on our existing customers. We don't want to be in a situation where the customer says, look, you're not meeting AQLs or you're not meeting your deliverables. So having checks and balances. So for example, we've got PMs and I've got an operations manager who supervises them. But, once in a while, I will also directly call the customer. I'm not necessarily the customer interface all the time, and I'll say, hey, how are we doing? How's our PM doing? How's our ops manager doing? How's everything going on the project, right? Just to check in. So to have those checks and balances to make sure, sometimes I do meet with customers operationally as well, especially if I feel like in the beginning, especially the first 90 days. That's when a project is most likely to fail. So I usually and that's also a transition time, right? For everybody, for the staff, the employees, everybody. So that's when I kind of really invest a lot of time in the beginning. And then once we've kind of stabilized the project, then it pretty much runs. And I like to check in less periodically, but I try to lean forward a lot in the beginning. I always say, one thing I learned was if there's something hard or there's a problem or the customer's angry, I like to run toward problems. So instead of just, it's never comfortable to have those conversations, especially in the beginning. But if there's something that really needs to be problem solved, and that's really all that I do all day long is solve problems with my team, then I've had to learn to run toward problems. And I learned that when I started working as an operations manager.
Yeah, because they're not going to go away.
They're not.
Right. The obstacle becomes the way. That's a stoic thing. And there's actually a book called that. And just I work out with a lot of people, we CrossFit, and it's, a lot of the fall forward attitude of just, get comfortable with being uncomfortable and that sort of thing. And it just kind of trains the body and trains the mind to always do that. That's probably why you're in the position you're in, right? Because you have that mindset of just because it's difficult or it's hard or it's going to be uncomfortable, that's not a reason to avoid it. Were you always that way, or did you develop that skill? How was that? How did that come about?
No, and it's funny because I will tell you that, I'm Indian. So as an Indian, when I was a girl, right, I'm an Indian woman now, we are not socialized in general to be risk takers, right? Indian women are not. And I think the best thing for those that are out here, and it may be Indian culture, it may be beyond Indian culture, is it for anybody that has a daughter, I would really encourage them to train and to teach their daughters, especially sons and daughters, that risk and reward are something that are directly correlated. And to, it's a really different mindset to teach your kids and especially your daughters to be risk seekers. Not just risk averse, okay, we'll take some risk, but to literally be risk seekers in all that they do. And the sooner that they can train them to do that from a young age, the better. Now, I don't encourage anybody to do anything that will jeopardize their own safety, because I know safety is a big issue with women and with girls. So, and I will tell you, I have to travel a lot by myself, and there are certain actions that I take and certain actions that I don't take that no man would ever have to think about, right? When I'm traveling by myself, right? So people can't see me, but those who know me know I'm a very petite woman. So it's just sometimes it's a matter of me scheduling my flight. So I get in and I'm able to get to my hotel before it gets dark, something like that, right? Just to avoid that type of thing. So, so what that means, so when I say be a risk seeker, that doesn't mean don't take the trip and go see the client. It just means schedule it and just try, I try not to be in a situation where I'm kind of alone in an isolated place in the dark and in a city that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And encouraging that, I think from a young age, I don't have kids, but I used to be one. And I was raised with a significant amount of shame and guilt.
Right.
And that got programmed in there.
Me too.
Right. Yeah. No,
Right.
I believe me, I know.
Yeah.
We would love you if you were better, but
Right.
since you're not, we can't. I mean, you got straight A's, but your room is a mess. So why
Right.
can't you be like this person?
Right.
I get it 100%. But what the way you speak, what I've learned from a number of different people and just in my own experience, the way that we speak to our kids becomes their internal voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that because my internal voice was a person who loved me and was doing the best they could and can, and just didn't realize that they were programming a message that they didn't mean to. It's not their fault, right? Maybe that's just the way I received it, but I did receive it, and I acted upon it, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, my entire life until probably about 6 years ago. I'm full on 37. And not that I have anything horrible or bad, I've had ups and downs and some significant changes came about, and that's kind of what brought me to this podcast and even doing, any of the stuff that I've done, in the past. But hearing you say, if you're teaching a child to take healthy risks and get outside of your comfort zone, mm-hmm. and don't just stay where you're comfortable, where something, try it. And if there's no failure, there's only lessons. They'll hear that too, right? That will become their internal voice. Mm-hmm. And then that will follow them into adulthood, and they'll learn their own lessons and make their own mistakes too. But at least they'll have that message when they're going forward. But so where along the line did you decide, because that wasn't what you were taught? Mm-hmm. How old were you? So there was one question that I had sent you previously, and it was about a jumping off point. And I ask mm-hmm. everyone about this. And the jumping off point is generally, a point in our lives where we can't continue doing what we're doing, but we're unsure about what we need to do next, right? We're looking for something different to happen. Finally get to that light bulb moment where we realize that it's me.
Right.
It's not everyone else.
Right.
The world doesn't hate me. They didn't all call each other and say, let's
right.
hate Philip today. Right? It's me. It's my actions. The accountability is with me. And if I don't like the way something's going in my life, I need to change my behavior. And that's scary, and that's hard. That's vulnerable. It feels bad because we don't want to be bad. We want to be good. So now I'm saying I'm bad. But were you ever at that point where, like, when was that point? How old were you? What was going on? And talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have a big jolt when they come out of college, right? Because it's like, oh, I got straight A's, I'm so smart. And you don't necessarily have to be a risk taker, right, to get straight A's. In fact, one might argue that, that risk averse behavior is what gets you great grades and the great job, and that gets you the ticket into, working at the place that you want to work at. But the problem is that if you're not confident in yourself, then, I found with myself, I felt like I had as much to offer as anyone else, but I felt like I was getting overlooked, not at Chenega, but at some of my prior jobs, when I had as much, if not more, to offer than some of my peers, right? And I noticed the difference was that they were very confident and aggressive in what they were saying. So that's how I learned to become more confident and aggressive in what I do. And that's not a natural thing that we, especially, like I said, as an Indian girl and a woman, we don't, and it's a double-edged sword too, right? Like, women get punished for being aggressive too. And I have been punished for it.
From who? From, like, family members or bosses in the workplace, or? When you say punished,
I've been punished in the workplace.
Yeah,
absolutely. I've been punished in the workplace. I've been punished for, basically, quote unquote, acting like a man. What they can perceive to be acting like a man. I've had, I've been called abrasive. I've been called lots of things. And I know that I wouldn't be called that if I were a man acting the exact same way. But But your response to that doesn't seem like it was, let me get angry, let me shut down. Your response to that seems like it was something different. What was that? Well, I don't really care, right? Because, I run a company and I work in sales, and I always say sales is actually a great job for women, because the numbers speak for themselves, right? And so my job is to grow the company, and to bring in sales, and then to operate the contracts and operate the requirements that we have. So if I'm doing a good job with that, right, and I'm getting good feedback from my customers, then, you don't become a CEO if you're trying to win a popularity contest. You're not going to be able to get people to like you 100% of the time, right? So that's just something that, that's just kind of par for the course. That kind of just comes with the territory. So, I have probably, let's say, out of 100 people, even if I get, 80, 90, whatever, like, people to like me, there's always going to be people that don't agree with things. And, sometimes I do look back when I'm a little bit more mature and I'm like a little bit later and I'm like, yeah, maybe I could have handled that differently. I could have been, maybe I could have been less abrasive, but, I think, we're all learning. So, but that is definitely something that I felt like I had to learn how to become more confident. And the problem is, or not the problem, but the thing that I've also learned is that if you don't have confidence in yourself, then others are going to mimic that, and they're not going to have confidence in you. So if you are going to step in to a capabilities pitch and you're going to be competing against all these other vendors to try to get, the 10 million, 20, 30, 40, $50 million contract, if you're not confident, people can smell that on you. And they're like, well, if you're not confident or you're nervous, then why should I, then if you don't even believe in yourself, then why should I help you? Yeah. Or why should I give our requirement to you? Yeah.
It's an inside job. I've heard that from a number of different people, leaders of companies, leaders of projects, teamwork. We just hear that message all the way, across the board, that it's an inside job. And confidence, but confidence, I found that at least I don't think the Marines, you guys are a big military friendly employment group. I bet they probably say this all the time, is that we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to the highest level of our training, right? Of our preparation. So, I think that just shows out when you're prepared, you end up being confident that you can deliver this message. You mentioned something earlier One of the things I had to learn, I used to be a people pleaser, and I never called that selfish, right? I would say I'm spending all day worrying about what other people are thinking. How could I ever be selfish? And I learned the lesson that if 80 out of 100 people generally like me, why would I focus on the 20 that don't, right? But that's where my mind goes, that 20%. And I think you used 90 and 10. And I've heard that all leaders, at some point they pick up on that message that you're never going to make everyone happy, and you can't focus on the 10% because you're robbing that 90% of the people that you could impact their life. You could bring them joy on a daily basis. You can lead them in this company where they support themselves. It's that is actually, that's more harmful, right, than it would be to focus on the 10 or 15 people, and especially in a sales environment, because I'm in one too, right? And we hear no all the time, right? I work for Transwestern. It's a commercial real estate brokerage firm. It's just as big. It's a national platform, and we're calling a lot of the same people that all of the other firms are calling, and we're hearing no. And then sometimes people react emotionally because they've been called too much. But if I had 20 conversations that day that went well, I can't focus on the 2 that didn't, because I'm robbing those other 20 people of the opportunity for me to be able to help them. And that was just a big lesson I've learned. And I don't know, that's just kind of what resonated with me when you were talking. But we never got to your mentors. Who are you? Do you have people in your life? Do you have other business owners? Are you part of a group or an association? Do you get together with people?
So when I need advice, I rely on, my boss, who's the president of the strategic business unit. His name is John Campagna. That's a person who, he's been working with Chenega and been a company president. And now, of course, he's the strategic business unit president for over 20 years. So he's seen a lot, lots of lessons learned. There's very little, frankly, that he hasn't seen. So, I'll go to him and I'll say, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And more than likely he's seen it and he has some advice, right? Yeah. So that's the person that I turn to first. The other folks that I turn to are some of my peers at Chenega, so other company presidents. Some of the company presidents that we have been at Chenega for 15, 20 years, and they've run multiple companies. So there isn't much that they haven't seen as it relates to government contracting. They've kind of seen, the ups and the downs of it and the different trends and things like that. So, those are folks that I turn to when I have questions about my business. And, I turn to my family as well, just to, because they don't work at Chenega, right? So they probably have a little bit more unbiased view, and they're just coming in as a total outsider.
Yeah. And you're married, you have kids and everything too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am married. We have 2 children who are 11 and 8, 2 boys.
Yeah. How'd you guys meet?
So we met through family friends. Yeah. That's how we met, through our community.
Were you married in your 20s?
Mm-hmm.
And so you started having kids then? And
yeah.
Do you, how did that affect some of the decisions you made centered around work and where you wanted to be and what you wanted to do next? Was that more of a motivation that, hey, I want to change things, or was it?
So when we had our kids, when we had our first child, I decided to leave the workforce. Mm-hmm. And I left the workforce for a couple of years, and we ended up having our second child. And so it's a little bit unusual to leave the workforce for several years in this area. I mean, I left the workforce for 4 years. So it's probably not unusual across all of the United States, but it is unusual, I think, in this particular area, Northern Virginia. I was able to get back into the workforce without too much hassle. So I would actually encourage those that are thinking about leaving the workforce temporarily, for any reason, to do that, whether it's taking care of a loved one or, a family member, a parent, a child. Most people are, I think, pretty okay with it, if you can explain why. And then I have done a lot of hiring as a hiring manager. So, in fact, we recently, as our program controller, we recently hired an individual who was a stay-at-home parent who wanted to get back into the workforce. So I definitely, having that experience, never really look at a gap on anyone's resume negatively. I know that's not how everybody operates, but at least I can do my part, right?
Well, that's impactful, right? You had that experience that you can share and you understand and you look at that from a different lens, right? You're able to resonate with that you did what you had to do at the time and now you're ready to do something different.
Yeah. Was
there any fear? Like, what were you feeling about trying to get back out there, and what was it like actually looking around, and how did you know what you wanted to do? Because you're coming from accounting at a consulting firm at that point, right?
Right, exactly. So, I looked around. It took me 3 months to find a job when I decided I was going to look. And so I applied full time. I made sure that I had reliable childcare in place, and actually started my kids at the childcare, even part time, just to ease them in a little bit. And that way I could concentrate even just 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day on, applications or interviews and stuff like that. So yeah, and then I actually applied online on Indeed or something like that to my job at Chenega, and did not know anybody here at this company, did not know what an Alaska Native corporation was beyond looking at their website. I had obviously worked in government contracting before, and my job was, the job was to manage financials. And so the location was really good for me. It was really close to my home. And that was a consideration. I'll just be dead honest with you, coming back with, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I wanted, that was a priority, to make sure that I could find something close by for my commute, and be able to, like, if I needed to rush home or there was some emergency or something like that, that I could do that, especially because my husband was working in DC at the time. And then I looked at the job description and I was like, okay, this looks like something I could do. This looks similar to something I've done before. It looks like something I could handle, because I'd worked at a lot of, quote unquote, high pressure jobs, but never with children. So yeah, I was nervous when I first came in that my technology skills were outdated or that I wasn't going to be able to handle it. But that didn't really happen. You'd be surprised. I mean, not a lot changes. I mean, we all still have to get up, get dressed in the morning, put on some decent clothes, proper interviewing skills, speaking skills, we still all use Microsoft Excel, not many, and the new version had come up. So I was like, I don't know, the old school version of Excel, and now they've made it horrible with their new buttons. And I was like, God, I can't find any buttons anymore on Excel. But, nothing really changed. I mean, people are still people even after a couple of years. So if you've got training, experience, certifications, education, and understand how to work in a professional environment. I mean, what is really going to change in 2 years, 3 years, whatever, I feel like people are under so much pressure to continue on, after they have kids, or even if they want to take time off. And I know I was really fortunate, and I know not everybody has this opportunity. I was fortunate that I had a choice. A lot of parents don't have a choice financially, but for those that have the choice and want to do it, I would encourage them to do it, because I'm a case study to show that, look, I did it. And, I came back to Chenega at less pay than I was making before I left. But I knew that it wasn't relevant what I made before, because that was what that pay was what the job was offering. And I knew that company was growing, and I knew they couldn't afford a ton more. And obviously I just was like, you know what? I'm going to come in, I'm going to get my foot in the door. So it worked out, clearly.
Yeah. Now you're the president of CABS. I mean, it obviously went well.
So, I got it. Like I said, it was a great low pressure way in that staff role to learn a lot, because it's not like they were expecting me to know anything. So
it sounds like you focused on the skill set and not the money at the time, right? I mean, you didn't make the money or the salary that's a deciding factor as to whether or not you were going to take the job. You had some other things that it met a criteria that you fit, that it fit, that you made for yourself. and then you made the best of it, it sounds like. Along that way, did you volunteer to take on more responsibility, or how did that come around? Were you driving the bus? Did you realize, look, I've learned these skills, I have these skills, I'm applying them here, and now I want a new challenge? And what was that process like? How do you even call that meeting? What do you?
Yeah, I was extremely aggressive while at Chenega about wanting to take on more responsibility. So, I would tell my supervisors, look, I have some free time. I was a salaried employee at that time. So I would tell them, hey, look, I have some free time. It doesn't take all day to manage financials when you only have 2 contracts, right? So it's not a full-time job. So I was like, you guys seem really busy. If you even need me to sit in a meeting or take some meeting minutes or whatever, like if there's other stuff that I can help with, maybe reading through some contracts or whatever you would like me to do, then let me know. I'm here, right?
Yeah. Rather than sit at your desk and surf the internet or do, whatever, you got up out of your seat and went and asked for something else to do or wanted a newer challenge.
Yeah.
Is that advice you would give to let's say someone in their 20s that, someone that meets you, that looks at your career, that says, I want to be in her position at some point, especially, whether it's a man or woman or whatever. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give them if they're, just help them understand when they're starting out in a job, what are some of the things that helped you be successful in that position, but also get to where you are now?
Yeah. And like I said, I have 2 boys who are 8 and 11. So, what I tell them is, the world is competitive. No one owes you anything. And if you want to, achieve things in life, and there are things that you guys want to, have the nice cars and the nice home, because how kids are. They're like, oh, mommy, I want that, or I want this. And I'm like, if you want it, I was like, if you want these things, you need to work hard in school. You need to be competitive, get straight A's, take the hardest classes, go to a good school, and work hard in your job, and contribute. Right. So I would say to anybody who's looking to move ahead in their career, I would say be a risk seeker. And so that means taking on different assignments, even if they're lateral, take them on because, what do you have to lose? Right. First of all, by taking on different assignments, it only helps you, develop your network, I would say. And especially people who are in their 20s. I mean, if you don't have to worry about childcare and things like that, I mean, take advantage of it. Take advantage if there's an opportunity to do, a foreign assignment. Take advantage of it. If there's an opportunity to travel, take advantage of it. I mean, you learn. There's always never pass up an opportunity for learning. And even if I go down to a military base or whatever, and, most military bases are not in exciting places, right? Yeah. So some people are like, well, I only want to travel to this place or that place. I'm like, no, like you should learn how to, there's everybody has something to offer. So learn, go to those places. It's not about the location. It's about the people that you meet. Yeah. That's what makes these places interesting to me.
Don't rob yourself of the experience that you can have there. Yeah. But someone in their 20s, you mentioned networking. Mm-hmm. What have you done in the past as far as networking? How do you, networking is huge, right? You can sign up for events and things, mm-hmm. but if you don't know anyone, what was that like for you? How did you start doing that?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I wasn't a good networker until I started this new company. So, and then I had to be a networker, right, for business development. So in the past 3 years, I have really, really learned how to network. And, I would pick 1 or 2 organizations where I thought I might feel comfortable. That's how you start. That's how you dip your toe in the water with networking, and go to the events and, walk up and talk to people. I mean, it's
a networking event. We're all there.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is you go to these events and you're like, oh, no one's talking to me. I'm so nervous. And then I'm like, well,
you have to do it.
You have to just go up to people. And one good tip that I learned was if there's a group of 3 people, right? Like an uneven group of people, like one person or three people, walk up to them. If it's a group of two people, they may be having some sort of conversation or something like that. That's, you don't know what their relationship is. They may be having a business conversation where it's a little bit awkward to come in. But if there's either one person or three people or five people sit, in a circle, you don't run the risk of, walking in on someone closing a deal or something like that, right?
Yeah. There's one outlier person that's probably the third wheel or the fifth wheel or something like that.
Exactly. So then you complete that group, right? And then you can come in and do that. Yeah, because if it's three people, it's more than likely just more of a casual conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. You were, I mean, even the advice you were giving sounded like focus on the skill set too. Like learn anything you can, any way you can, volunteer for, whatever, because you don't know, even if it's lateral, because you don't know where that could benefit you. Just thinking back to my own career, I learned so many different things that at the time it seemed like, what am I going to do with this? But now I get to use it. You never know when you get to be useful with that one thing that someone needed that they didn't even know they needed.
Yeah, and even if it's an experience, right? So, next week I'm going to Kings Bay, Georgia, right? Right. Try to control your envy, right? So I'm going to Kings Bay, Georgia for work, right? But you never know. Like I may meet a customer, right? Next week, or I may meet a colleague or someone I'm trying to do business with, right? That also has work in Kings Bay, Georgia. It's a connection point, right? And that's the other thing I learned too, working in sales, is it is actually kind of important to have some hobbies. I don't have a ton of time for hobbies between my job and my kids, but, it is nice to be well-rounded, because it's something people like to talk about, other stuff besides work. They like to get to know people on a personal level. So, for example, the traveling that we used to like to do, that's something that you can connect with someone on.
Yeah. Where's the last place you've been on vacation?
Peru.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
When was that?
Christmas.
Oh, so just last year.
On vacation. Yeah. The last work trip I took was to Detroit Arsenal in February. But the last actual vacation that we had was going to Peru, and I miss it so much. Really? I look through our pictures from the trip.
Did you take the kids?
Every day. Yes, we did.
That's huge, right? They're going to always remember being able to go there and experience that, and that's just going to help them. Not everyone gets to do that. I didn't travel
I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents weren't.
No.
We weren't no, they came here. So that's
Yeah.
No, I get it. But I look back, like if I ever have kids of my own, I would try to expose them to as much as I can. Yeah,
and we're in a position of privilege, right? Because I get it. Like it's super expensive to go to these places, and let alone taking your entire family. So I totally understand. I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody, take your kids to Peru or whatever. Like when it may not be within everybody's price point. It's certainly it's definitely. But my thing is that it's really important to me to have my kids be global citizens and to understand different people's cultures. And it's funny because we took them to Ireland a couple of years ago, and I was like, just to be clear, I told my kids, I was like, just to be clear, you're the one that speaks English with a funny accent when we go to Ireland. Like, I just want you to understand that, right? Like, you're the weirdo, right? With the accent. There is no, because we told them, we're like, well, just so you know, people in Ireland, they speak English, but they speak it with what's called an accent, because it was a couple of years ago. And my younger son, he was 6 years old. So we wanted to explain that, we shouldn't make fun of people's accents. We shouldn't, laugh at them, because kids will do stuff like that. And they don't mean it maliciously, right? They just don't know. And I told them, I'm like, just so you know, you guys are the weird ones with an American accent when we're in somebody else's country, right? So trying different foods, learning different, having people speak different languages. Like my kids, when we went to Peru, I taught them a couple basic conversational words in Spanish. So, if we were taking a taxi anywhere, they'd come in, they'd jump in the taxi and say, hola, to the driver. And it's such a small thing, but it really kind of warms people up, So yeah, I think it's, they get this opportunity to have incredible, to have incredible experiences. And of course, I totally get that international travel, like I said, is super expensive. But even if you have the opportunity to travel domestically when things open back up, there's so many different cultures within the United States and places to visit that, the more that I can expose my kids to different things and different people and different ideas, and encourage them to be risk seekers, the better.
Yeah, I like that. Risk seekers. I'm going to borrow that. But aside from traveling, what else? What other kind of hobbies do you do? What do you like? Do you and your husband have like a workout routine? Do you do any kind of Orange Theory or?
Yeah. So I used to do tons and tons of cardio.
What kind of cardio?
I used to do the stair step machine.
Okay.
The most evilest of machines. And
in the house, or did you go to a gym?
In my community gym. Mm-hmm. And I don't do cardio anymore. Now I lift heavy.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of lifting are you doing?
Heavy for me.
Right.
To be clear.
No,
not heavy for a normal.
Yeah, I got all excited.
Being.
Like
right. Right.
You're deadlifting 405. Nice.
Right. So yeah, I love to lift heavy. I love those workout machines, the leg lift machines, and the ab machines. And so I do that because it helps me burn stress. It helps, your metabolism. And it's definitely, I encourage all women, again, to consider lifting. Rather than cardio, because with cardio, it's good, you burn calories, I get it, but lifting actually changes your shape, your body shape, right? Mm-hmm. And I am a testament to the fact that, like, a lot of people think that, like, if women lift heavy, they're going to get muscular. I'm the least muscular person you'll ever meet. So I'm a testament to the fact that that's just simply not true, right? It changes your body shape. It's good for women to do that because it increases their bone density. And I encourage also women to do it because it's a form of stress relief, and it's something that you can do relatively quickly instead of spending hours and hours running to nowhere on cardio, right? And because you get on that cycle of, oh, I'm on a diet and I'm counting my calories, and let me go burn off all, I ate something, so let me go burn off all this, these calories on an exercise machine or running outside. And I'm like, you know what? I don't diet and exercise. I eat and train.
Yeah, because a lot of that isn't centered around a healthy lifestyle. It's centered around shame or guilt, right? Some sort of you feel guilty about what you ate because you feel shameful about something about what you look like. I was just having this conversation with another guy, and a lot of guys don't talk about this. But the body dysmorphia, the body shame, that's nobody loves these handles. Like, I don't know where they came up with this phrase, like love handles. It's not a real thing. It's not a real thing. Nobody wants them, but when you have them, right? Or just you can be working out, and it's. I would just constantly look for the next thing that was wrong. I lost quite a bit of weight. But you see the height that I am now. I was 242 in 2017. So I get that. Right. That resonates with me a lot. But you mentioned something that's very important, that you're not eating cake and then going for a 2-mile run. You didn't actually accomplish anything. And actually the psychology that you're training your brain to understand with, centered around food and exercise, probably is way more harmful than the sugar or the calories from that cake. Mm-hmm. How have you found, because it sounds like you have some sort of workout routine and you're doing it for your body, you're doing it for your psychology. You mentioned stress. How have you found getting into that workout routine, changing the way that you show up to work and that you show up to situations and you show up as a leader in your position? Like this being recording in your office for this podcast, I woke up this morning, I did my routine. I have a morning routine, and I'd like to get, what yours is, if you have one. It's working out. So I wake up, I work out, I do CrossFit Fairfax, if you're looking for a spot. I come home, I started doing this cold shower. Are you familiar with Wim Hof?
I've heard of the cold shower. Yeah.
Wim Hof, David Goggins. These are some of the guys that I listen to. And big proponent of the cold shower. So I did that. I have a prayer and meditation routine that I've developed, and I would like to get some information from you about that, like or whether or not you have one. I found it helpful. Some journaling. That's just kind of how I set the stage. It sounds like a lot, but it doesn't take very long. It doesn't, like, these small actionable items that can be done in a couple minutes seem to set me up for a better day. I don't know what better means in comparison to, I have experiences throughout the day, and they're either going to go one way or another, and I'm going to learn something from them. Some are probably not what I wanted to happen, but that doesn't make them bad. And that's kind of how I try to show up to every day. Mm-hmm. How is your workout routine, and what is your morning routine, and how has that prepared you to show up? Because this is a pretty significant size company, and it's a significant responsibility. So the person you show up as is very important. Mm-hmm. What have you been doing, or how do you make sure that person that shows up is the best person she can be?
Yeah. So my morning routine is, I get up in the morning, I do drink coffee. So that's one vice I have not been able to kick yet. So I do have 2 cups of coffee in the morning. So I drink that. I kind of start to come alive. I look at my Pinterest board, which I call Daily Hustle, and that's full of motivational quotes.
Is that like a vision board? Do you do one of those?
Yeah, it's like that. So it's got, quotes, it's got prayers, it's got everything, that I need to get myself motivated for the day.
And it's electronic, so it's easy to look at.
Yeah, it's on my phone. Yeah. So yeah, I look at that. I make my kids breakfast. I juice in the morning. Make green juice in the morning. Start off right with that. And then lately I've been trying to do intermittent fasting. Trying is the key word here. I have the green juice, and then I try to not eat until 10 o'clock. So been trying to do that.
When do you stop eating the night before?
See, you're supposed to do it 10 to 6. You're only supposed to eat in an 8-hour interval, but I do get really hungry at night. So I will eat, I'll eat like a snack, like at 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
All right. So you're getting 14 hours of fast, right? You're doing the green juice, so you get calories, but that's still liquid. You're not breaking your fast necessarily. Right. You're getting nutrients,
exactly.
But you get nutrients from water. So if you're drinking water, you're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah. And if I'm super hungry, I might have like a pear or an apple or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but I cut you off. All right, so you juice?
Yeah, so I juice for, I make juice for me and my husband. My kids have refused to do the juice so far. Yeah, they're definitely in revolt as it pertains to juice, and I don't blame them because it's tough.
No kid wants
the
to
green juice is really tough, but it's a great way. Juicing is a great way to get like this huge shot of vitamins and minerals that frankly you're just not gonna be able to get by eating. So I think it's important to eat vegetables too, right, for that bulk. So I get when people are like, oh, juicing's stupid because, it gets rid of, all the bulk and the roughage that you should be eating and juices it all up, and I was like, yeah, I get that. But the thing is, like, I'm not going to eat like an entire head of romaine lettuce, right? Throughout the day, right? Every single day. So again, it's more about the vitamins and the minerals that you would never normally get.
You get the nutrition that you wouldn't ordinarily have just through your eating.
And honestly, it's quick because I don't take a lunch break. I just, and I.
How long have you been doing that? Is that just your system? You come in. You come in at the same time every day?
Yeah. So our standard business hours are 8 to 5. The duty day starts at 8 o'clock, ish. I'm up well before that, but, the duty day starts at 8 o'clock, here at Chenega, and, and then I just usually work through lunch. And because I work through lunch, I usually, kind of cut off a little bit, like at 4, just to, basically prepare my kids' dinner. And then I usually log on a little bit later in the evening just to catch up on anything I missed between 4 to 6.
Right. Do you have a habit of going to sleep at the same time and waking up at the same time? Is that part of your system also?
Yes. I go to bed early. I go to bed by 10 o'clock. And I wake up, I do get a full 8 hours of sleep. So on a good day, I'll wake up at 6 o'clock. Sometimes I wake up earlier.
Do you get much alone time in the morning with, you have 2 kids and a husband, so I don't know, but is that part of,
That's
a lot
part,
of people?
That's part of why I kind of also like waking up early a little bit.
Right.
It's because if I wake up at the same time my kids wake up, it's like I'm like frazzled because then I have to like attend to their needs, and then this way I can kind of drink my coffee and I have a little bit of serenity to get my mind right before the kids wake up.
What do you do during that time when you're drinking coffee? Do you journal at all? Is that a thing? Do you read?
I journal when I'm stuck on a problem. Then yes, I will journal. Like if I have a strategic issue that I'm thinking about and I'm just totally blocked, then yes, I will journal. But mostly I look at my Pinterest board and I do look at my calendar for the day, just to get my mind right, because I have so much stuff going on every day that I need to look at my calendar daily to say, okay, this is, what I'm going to have to tackle today.
Right. You have to have a plan. So your Pinterest board, what are some of these quotes and where did you find them? Can you think of any off the top of your head, or if you have them?
So let me see. So I just get them off, like if you search on Pinterest for, inspirational quotes and things like that, like this iceberg one is probably my favorite. And I know our listeners can't hear it, but to describe it, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is that people don't see all the stuff underneath success. So it's the classic picture of the iceberg with, you see the success, but you don't see underneath the iceberg. And you see, the other things that are written are like failure, disappointment, adversity, rejection, sacrifice, struggles, late night, risk. And it's absolutely true. Because like I said, people, even on social media, I mean, all you see, and it's not a criticism of LinkedIn or social media, but companies announce their awards, right? They don't announce, they don't announce when they lose, right? Any bids that they've lost, they announce their awards. You see, like our website, it shows, all our projects that we've won. It doesn't show you that, for every project we won, there's 9 others that I competed for and lost.
Right. Yeah, we celebrate the success, not the failures, for some reason. When it's actually, everything I've ever learned was from something not going well. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I learned as much from something going right because there was just no reason for me to change. If something happened, I'd never acknowledge it because I probably wouldn't even notice it. Not necessarily winning a contract. I think that's like kind of obvious. But it wasn't my natural process to go back and when something good happened, let's say I won a piece of business, to really look at what went well and what led up to that.
Yeah, and we're getting better about that at Chenega too. So we'll do what's called like a hot wash or like a lessons learned. And technically after you bid every single proposal, whether you won or lost, you are supposed to do that lessons learned. Mm-hmm. That is something that we're starting to do even when we win, to see why we win. And then also when I'm internalizing, like I have to give so many capabilities briefs to customers. And sometimes, you have to be careful when you say things. People kind of take it. They might, say, well, what do you mean by that? Or they'll take it kind of wrong. And you I just always make a mental note that, maybe that's not a phrase. I feel like it's positive, but someone else may have a negative connotation who's working in the government for that. Because the government's perspective, that's our customer, right? So the government's perspective is very different from ours. Now, remember, the government, for all intents and purposes, is a nonprofit organization, and they're interested in mitigating their risk. Right. So so that's totally different, right? From my, from my philosophy, right. And how we run our company. We're a for-profit organization.
Right. That you want to win that contract.
Yeah. That we've got to take risks. I mean, we have to take risks. I mean, I always kind of wonder, with salespeople, because I spend almost all my time on the phone or talking with people. And I'm like, how do you You don't win deals in your office. How do you win deals when you're sitting in your office? And everybody wants to kind of always be behind a keyboard, right? And I'm sorry. I mean, you got to get out. I mean, sales is a contact sport. So that's what I tell people. Like, I get nervous when I see people who are in sales behind their desk typing on their computer like all day. I mean, email is good. Yes, we have won things with written capabilities briefs. That is true. You can win work without necessarily talking to the government customer by submitting a bid, right? But we are selling to people. We are people selling to people. And this is such a cliche, and I say this every time I do a podcast, and I'm going to say it one more time. People do business with people who they like and trust.
Yeah. That's just the way it works. They can't do business with you if they don't know you. And they can't trust you or like you if they don't get to know you. And it's not going to happen by trading emails.
Right. And I always say, like, and I've said this before too, email is the worst form of communication because I heard somewhere in one of the Harvard Business Review podcasts that it said that somebody said that 90% of communication is nonverbal. And so you're missing 90% of communication when you're writing an email. And email's really great, especially like now with COVID, when you've got kids. You know, my kids are at home. They're still in the virtual school. And so I totally get that email is a wonderful thing right now, as we can do our job and we can communicate with people without, even if our kids are kind of sitting right next to us or making noise. So I totally get that post-pandemic. Email is a great thing. And email is non-intrusive, right? But sometimes you just got to pick up the phone and call people because they can't hear your tone. They can't hear your intention. And if it's ever going to be a difficult conversation, I never email it. I always call. If there's any chance that I think it could be taken negatively, or if we're trying to solve a problem, it has to be a phone call.
And that's part of the customer service. You mentioned that earlier. Also, if you have negative news to deliver to me, if it just shows the other person that you respect them enough to pick up the phone and you're meeting it head on, that like, I value our relationship and I value that we can communicate with each other. And even though I know this isn't something you want to hear, I'm going to do everything I can to mitigate it or take care of it. But I'm here to tell you directly. I'm not just going to send you an email or drop a note. That's like mailing a letter to say, it's like, no, I showed up. So what can you point to as the three biggest drivers of the company culture here? And if you can just share even just one experience that you've had in the past that have helped you shape that as being here.
Yep. So I subscribe to the 3 H's, which is hungry, hustle, and humble. So I tell people, like, we just hired some new staff members, and we were very straight up with them. We were like, look, if you like doing the same thing over and over again at a very relaxed pace, please don't come work here. Because, we are not a large company. Right. We have a very lean staff, right? Not to the point where everybody's working 70 hours a week or anything like that. It's not necessarily in terms of the work hours, but every day is going to be different. You'll start working on task A, and then all of a sudden the government will drop an RFP and you'll have to start working on task B. That becomes the priority all of a sudden. So if you're going to react poorly to rapidly changing requirements that are customer driven, please don't come work at Chenega. Please don't come work for us. At least for cabs, right? I can't speak necessarily for all of Chenega because we do have larger businesses and their pace may be different, but for cabs, you're going to have to, if you're going to be part of our PMO staff, at least here in Lorton, you're going to have to be okay with that. And again, I'm all for work-life balance. I don't think that anybody should be working 60, 70, 80 hours. I mean, that's preposterous, right? At least on an extended basis. I strongly encourage my staff to take leave during our non-busy periods and things like that because I don't think it's sustainable at all to work those kind of hours on a regular basis, and I don't think people should have to. I think it's ridiculous. So I don't get impressed with staff that's regularly working overtime or just that first in the office, last out of the office thing, it doesn't impress me. And to be dead honest with you, I, as the company executive and president, I actually should be working the most, more than the staff.
Right.
You know, I feel like executives should work more than staff.
Yeah, you're in the leadership.
Yeah.
So, but the culture here is work-life balance, and when you're here, show up.
Right.
Show up.
Yeah. Work hard, play hard.
Right.
I'm all about work hard, play hard. You know, and like I said, I mean, just if you want to learn and get exposure to a lot of different things and kind of go outside your boundaries and get some great experience, that CABS is absolutely 100% the place for you. And we want work to be fun. You shouldn't come in, you know, and not be able to laugh. We laugh a lot, because it's a way of relieving stress, right? Yeah. So we can be in a high risk, stressful environment, but, you know, we laugh and make jokes and things like that. We have to get our stuff done, but. Yeah.
What would you say the difference, or do you think there's a difference between belonging and fitting in? Mm-hmm. You know, especially when it relates to your company culture. You just mentioned laughing and joking. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm the first woman president at Chenega Military Intelligence Operations Support, MIOS. I was the first female president. You know, at the time when I was appointed, all the other presidents were, you know, of a different group, right? And fit into a certain mold. I did not fit into that mold at all. And I didn't try to be honest with you. You know, I didn't try to dress in a masculine way when I had to go into these meetings. I just dressed in what I felt was professional and comfortable. I didn't try to change my personality or quote unquote act like a man. But I came in, I wanted to learn from my peers. And, you know, I started working hard and we started having success. And, you know, it's funny because, and I tell my operations manager all the time, people want to help you when they see you helping yourself. Mm-hmm. So, and I've received a lot of help from my peers at Chenega who are further along in the 8A program or have more resources because they are, you know, they're running large businesses versus startups. And I think the reason why is because they see us working hard to help ourselves. So if I were to come in and say, well, give me this handout, give me that handout, you have so many resources and I don't have anything, I'm a newco, you need to help me. That is not, in my opinion, a good attitude. But when they see us pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps, then they feel motivated to help them. When I call to say, look, I've done X, Y, and Z. Can you help me with Q? Right? Do you mind?
Yeah,
right?
Everybody loves a hustler.
Right? Then I think people really respect that. So to answer your question on belonging and fitting in, because I haven't answered it, I don't fit in with my peer group, but I belong there because I'm running a successful company. I've earned my seat at the table, and I know that I'm respected by my peers.
And you feel like you belong, right? It's not just that you're trying to fit in and it's almost fictitious. Because I think sometimes they've told me, you know, fitting in and belonging, the feeling of belonging means that they're respected by their peers. They mm-hmm. feel like they belong there. They don't have to try to fit in.
I don't fit in at all. Yeah. I never will. I don't play golf. I don't, you know, have the same interests as them. You know, I don't fit in. So I'm not going to bother trying. But I know that I belong here at Chenega with my peer group.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys are, how many military folks do you guys hire or do you have on staff?
We have, I don't remember the percentage offhand, but it's extremely high.
Yeah. Big fan of the military.
Yeah.
You guys are too. Mm-hmm. I think that's right on your website, military friendly.
We recently won an award. We actually won the 2020 Best Places to Work from Washington Post, and we won the military friendly one. I think the second year in a row. I love to employ prior military and also military spouses. So, you know, especially many of the people that we employ, like on base, are military spouses. So, for example, we've got work in several Navy bases in Japan and Guam and in Europe. And a lot of the folks there are folks that are, there for, a year or two or whatever, that are there with their significant other.
Yeah. So if you can go back to one point in your life, when would it be and what would you change?
Oh, wow.
Or would you, right? Is there
I don't know that I would.
Is there a point in time in your life that you can go back to, or that you thought about, that you would do something differently, or that you ever feel like, had I done this one thing, now would be different? Or are you just kind of the person you are now is because of everything that added up and happened?
No, I mean, I definitely look back, especially when I was in college, and I was like, I could have handled that differently. I could have been more mature, But I mean, frankly, who is really mature in college, right? Yeah. So I'm really blessed. I always say my children are my biggest accomplishment. So I don't think there's anything that I would change. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. One of the things that I'm, again, going back to that I'm really glad that I did, that I look back and I'm like, I 100% made the right decision, was choosing to leave the workforce after having our first child. Now that I look back on it, because I didn't know, you don't know if it's the right decision at the time when you do it. But now I know 100%, because I'll never get that time back again. And now my kids are growing up and I'm sad. So
what's one thing that you want future Sonia to be proud of that you're working on now?
Mm-hmm. So I am working on trying to pay it forward with some of the young ladies that work on staff with us, mentoring them, elevating them, right? To achieve what I feel they can be, what they may not even know what they have inside themselves. So I do, push them. But, they definitely, just basically impacting them in that way. I got we just had Boss's Day. I got a really sweet card from my operations manager on Boss's Day. I didn't even know it was Boss's Day, actually. And it was a super sweet card. And she was like, thank you for impacting me and for inspiring us and all your hard work. And for seeing people for what they can be, not just what they are. So, so that definitely, made me feel all the feels when I got that.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, thank you for, I know we're pushing up against time, but thank you for being willing to do this with me.
Thanks for listening to DC Local Leaders. We'd love to connect with you. Find us on LinkedIn and YouTube by searching DC Local Leaders, on Instagram at DC Local Leaders, or our website, dclocalleaders.com. You can find the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or wherever you find great podcasts. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're a business leader and have questions on your lease and how it impacts your business's opportunities to grow, or have questions about the market, you can reach Philip directly at philip.nathram@transwestern.com. He'd love to speak with you. Until next time.
Yeah.